We are joined now by Speaker Mike Johnson. Appreciate him joining us. Obviously, a lot of reaction to come from what happened yesterday in the House, both with the Israel funding bill and also with the attempt to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. And so I think right off the top, appreciate you joining us, Speaker. What exactly the three Republicans who flipped? You're counting your numbers. Was there anything that surprised you about the vote tally that went down yesterday in the House?
There was on the Mayorkas vote. Look, last night was a setback. Democracy is messy. We are dealing with literally, guys, the smallest majority in the history of the U.S. Congress. So I have on any given day, a 1 to 2 vote margin. So the head counting and the whip operation is absolutely essential. We expected that we would win it by 1 last night because there's a Democrat who was out for surgery and had been out, not been here for votes. Turned out they were hiding him in the back. He had a hospital gown on, and they wheeled him in for that vote at the last minute. But temporary setback. Everyone needs not worry. We're going to take care of this responsibility. We have a duty to hold Mayorkas and the Biden administration accountable for all this, and those impeachment articles are going to pass. We'll do it next week.
So what happened? You knew that you had 3 no votes in your caucus. As you mentioned, you don't have very much of a of leeway here. And Democrats legitimately hid someone that you thought was in the hospital and wheeled him in on a hospital bed to try to embarrass Republicans and keep the Mayorkas impeachment from happening. That's your understanding of vote counting and what happened?
Yeah, well, it quite literally did happen in real time. I wasn't 100% certain we'd have 3 hard no's. I was working on a couple of them, one in particular that I thought might actually vote differently. But he says he voted his conviction. That's fine. But then, we literally had a Democrat come in a hospital gown, with no socks and vote. So, Congress is messy sometimes. Democracy is messy. But everybody need not be worried. We got steady hands at the wheel. We're going to get the job done. But when you have the smallest majority in history, it's not easy sledding any day. It takes a lot of hard work, but we're getting it done.
Mr. Speaker, it's Buck. Thanks for being here with us on the show.
Sure.
Let's assume that the plan here that you've laid out is what happens. And so next week there's a vote, articles impeachment goes through, Mayorkas, loses that vote. Then what? What do you want to be the follow-on to it? And what actions do you think will change as a result of this accountability?
Well, look, under the rules, we will send the articles of impeachment over to the Senate for a trial of that impeachment. That's the constitutional legal process as it plays out here. And the Senate will have to evaluate the merits of that. Look, Mayorkas has not just been incompetent in his role. He has been very intentional, very deliberate. They deliberately opened the U.S. border. It was a series of actions that we've documented, by the way, 64 specific actions that President Biden took on his first day in the Oval Office by executive authority, and then throughout, and through the agencies and through Mayorkas. They created this catastrophe. And then he's come before Congress multiple times and just lied about it under oath. He did it to me, to my face, multiple times in the House Judiciary Committee. There must be accountability for that. And extreme times call for extreme measures. There hasn't been a cabinet secretary impeached, as everyone now knows, since the late 1800s. But there has never been a cabinet secretary that so openly defied federal law and created such catastrophic results for the country than this individual. And so we have to do what must be done.
And Mr. Speaker, on the issue of a standalone funding bill to Israel for $17 billion in aid to Israel, what is the argument against this? It seems to me that tying this to the border or tying this to Ukraine is an absurdity meant to evade accountability for those who are in the Congress. And I feel like the American people in this election year should see which Democrats and which Republicans vote for up or down aid to Israel after the October 7th attacks. I mean, what's the latest on this?
I tell you what, there's going to be a serious price to pay for that. Let's be clear about what happened last night. President Biden issued a veto threat over the very funding that he himself requested. It was exactly what he asked for months ago, $14.3 billion. We did that, and then we added on top of it what was necessary, the additional amount to replenish our stockpiles. President Biden issued a veto threat over that. Chuck Schumer threatened a blockade in the Senate. And then last night, 166 House Democrats, led by Leader Jeffries, fell in line. They voted against a clean, standalone aid package to our ally, Israel, at its most desperate time. I mean, Israel is fighting for its survival right now. They don't object to the bill's contents. They want to use it as a political pawn in a game they're playing. It's wrong for national security. It's bad policy. It's bad politics. President Biden has a 37% approval rating right now in the latest poll. They're following him right over the cliff, and it's madness. And I think the Jewish community throughout this country, I think that they are just stunned that they've taken this action, and I think there's going to be a price to pay at the election.
We're talking to Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Appreciate you joining us, Mr. Speaker. On that front, border, I think you said dead on arrival in conjunction with several other members of House leadership. Israeli funding, you guys are trying to get that done. Ukraine funding. Why would there be one bill? Do you anticipate there being individual votes on each of these issues? And how does that work if Biden's saying he's going to veto standalone funding for Israel? Do you believe he's bluffing, or do you think that's true?
He'd better be bluffing. I mean, the fate of the Middle East rests upon his doing the right thing there. And we are going to do the right thing. I don't have any control over what the president does, clearly, but I do have control over the House performing its responsibility. To your point, I do think those are separate issues. I think they have to be evaluated on their own merit. And I've been very crystal clear on this all along the way since the day I got the gavel. I told them exactly where the House was on each of these issues and that we would have to do that separately. And so I told them that as recently as this morning. I mean, the Senate apparently now is going to drop their border fiasco, and they're going to try to lump all these things together and send it over in what they'll call a national security package, where they'll have Israel and Ukraine and probably the Indo-Pacific funding all in one measure. And I told them, we're not going to do that in the House. They have to be evaluated separately. And, we'll just have to send it back in different pieces. But I can't control what the Senate does, but I can control this chamber.
What are the most important priorities for you as Speaker between now and Election Day, sir?
Well, look, the number one priority, we're all here to save this country. The House Republicans, I ran for office, and my colleagues did because we were desperately, deeply concerned about the trajectory of the country. I have children. I'm worried about what they're going to inherit, right? All of us are. And so to do that, we know the reality is we have to maintain and grow the House majority. So much of what evolves into public policy comes out of the House. It's critically important. To do that, we'll be governing along the way between now and the election, and we'll be focusing on the menace of China and all of its various issues. We'll be focusing on energy policy, trying to reduce energy costs. We're going to continue to press against this radical regulatory regime. The White House having weaponized so many agencies of the federal government to work against working families and industries and businesses. We're going to be pressing for our core principles along the way. And there's a lot to do here. We know that it'll all be blockaded, I'm sure, by Chuck Schumer in the Senate. But we're going to do our duty, and we're going to show the contrast to the American people between the two parties and their not just their ideology, but their action. And I think that's going to speak volumes to voters.
Mr. Speaker, there's also a simultaneous attempt to potentially impeach Joe Biden. And I think Mike Gallagher, congressman, said, hey, the reason I'm voting against Mayorkas is ultimately I believe Biden should be responsible for the failure at the border. Do you anticipate also moving forward on potentially impeaching Joe Biden, that is the top of the Democrat government, in the months ahead? Or to you, is Mayorkas the target now, not worrying about Biden?
No, I think we have lots of worries here. I mean, this administration has been an abject failure in so many ways, and you've seen that we've handled impeachment with the weight that is incumbent upon us. I mean, next to the declaration of war, I often make the argument around here, impeachment is probably the heaviest power that is given to the House in the Constitution. We take it very seriously. It requires slow, deliberate action, very methodical inquiry and investigation, and that is what you've seen. We've been investigating the president himself through 3 different committees of jurisdiction: Judiciary, Oversight, Ways and Means. Our chairman and those committees have done exceptional work. They have followed the truth where it led, and that is what our system requires. And so we have a couple of dots left to connect. We have a couple of subpoenas, as you know. James Biden himself and Hunter Biden will finally be submitting to deposition at the end of this month. And after that, I think that it'll all be wrapped up in a package, and we'll carefully evaluate that. And if it does indeed seem that impeachment is the proper course, we will take that course. We have no choice. We have to follow our oath to the Constitution, and that's what's required.
Who do you like in the Super Bowl, by the way? I'll give you something easy here. 49ers or Chiefs? Which side are you taking?
I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I can never pull for San Francisco. I'm sorry, guys. I just can't do it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I can understand that for sure.
Thanks for being with us, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate your time.
You got it. Great to talk with you. God bless.